Welcome to Healing with the Diamonds podcast. This show features Larry and Lynne Diamond, along with guests who are passionate about helping families heal together. Through personal stories and powerful conversations, you'll hear real-life experiences and practical tools for reclaiming health. Please note, the information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine. If you're enjoying Healing with the Diamonds podcast, we'd love your help spreading the word. Leaving a quick review or rating on your favorite podcast platform helps others find us and helps more families start their own healing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Now, here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. I am Larry Diamond.
And I am Lynne Diamond.
And welcome to Healing with the Diamonds. We are here with podcast 2 of our origin story, bringing ancestral wisdom to modern families so you can thrive and heal and have a healthy family like us. Your birthright of agency and being the CEO of family health.
Yeah. So when we wrapped up our podcast 1, origin story, one of the things that I think really at least stood out to me was your passion for helping others. And so once you had like this new, more accurate information and all these tools to go with it that were working for us, you began to share it. So can you talk a little bit about what that looked like and both good and bad experiences? Because we have both.
Lynne brought out the good and the bad. And I would say the bad was what I call, and many people do, and it's very common, becoming evangelical. Evangelicalness is quite common for people that are empathetic and natural healers. You've discovered something that you wish you had known decades earlier and that you know isn't your personal opinion. It actually is based on how nature works, how our bodies work, and can be almost universally applied. I knew it wasn't my opinion. People around the world were discovering low carb, healthy fat, and intermittent fasting independent of me. So I was just one of the co-discoverers of what I call what is, or how nature works. And I also discovered why eat often, everything in moderation, a calorie is a calorie, move more, eat less, doesn't work. I had never been anywhere under 250 pounds for over 20 years. And I had been what's called super morbidly obese, 50 plus BMI for well over 10 years. And then I was effortlessly shedding pounds and enjoying the whole process, and my best food ever. You'd want to share.
Yeah, exactly. You want to share how great you felt and how easy it was to...
How fun it was. Yeah. And so my evangelical phase with you, and I remember it, and when it would really kick in would be your late night eating. Because I had never not, I know that's a double negative, I had never not eaten right before bed. And all of it, well, not all of a sudden, but by consistent application, not perfect, but consistent, of low carb, healthy fat, which I became fully fat adapted. And in my 6 years plus health coaching, 11 plus years, 12 plus years of transformation, I found for the majority of people, it serves them better to become fully fat adapted, where they're burning body fat throughout the day. Their bodies, through consistent low carb, healthy fat, have switched from using glucose. All the cells that have the option of glucose and free fatty acids, there was no difference in willpower between us. I simply wasn't hungry at night. And I remember this, at least on my end, that it was breaking my heart to see how hungry you were all the time. So that's why I had a bit of an evangelical phase with you. It was well-meaning.
And what helped enforce that with me is when you would share the science about it. It helped to come from a less emotional presentation to like, hey, this is something you might want to think about. Let me show you the science that backs this up. And that's what I love about what we're trying to do here. We're showing people, you might consider making these changes and let me show you the science. And by the way, it worked with us. So you did it for me. I was your first,
Yeah.
I was your first client, as it were. And then you started to really go out to people outside our circle. What was that like?
So it was kind of magical. So I started at 290, and this is quite common. I was so morbidly obese that no one commented on my weight loss up until Christmas break. So I took a couple of weeks off, and by that time I was down to around 230, so 60 pounds. And then just like when you came back over summer break and you had lost an additional 20 pounds, I was losing well over 10 pounds a month at that point, effortlessly. Something clicked with people at work, so much so that I worked in a 3,000 person campus. My division was 100 people, but there were people in other divisions that had seen me for years because we got to the workplace at the same time. And they were like, what happened? They didn't even know my name. They were like, what happened? Yeah, dude. There were a few people who told me they were concerned that I had cancer because it's so rare.
It was
But I always took it as a compliment. And I always knew I was morbidly obese, and I never let it define me as a human being. And that's something I haven't mentioned yet. There's no morality associated with our food choices, but there are impacts not only on us, but on our family and on the greater society. And speaking of my workplace, I could see this happening. Some people were becoming essentially demented before they retired, and other people would have to pick up their work. So, this is an inescapable fact. Our families love us. Hopefully strangers love us. But when we aren't healthy, those impacts ripple out to our family first and then all across the globe. On the other hand, when any of us heal and reclaim our agency, then we become change agents rippling out on the globe. So people were interested, and I was very evangelical with gluten-free in particular. And I want everyone to look this up. It's called the Bigu tradition, Bigu. Bigu was grain avoidance. So 2,500 years ago, and also the Taoists did not eat grains and they practiced intermittent fasting. And they actually said if a person avoids grain, they will have no illness and they will become immortal. So I'm thinking that I was gluten-free enthusiast light compared to the Taoists, because they're saying we get superpowers, heal everything, and become immortal with grain avoidance. But it's interesting to me that they were the original grain-free enthusiasts.
I think one thing that I think is interesting to note is that when you were that evangelical, what were the reactions of the people around you, and how did you moderate that? Because I think that's important, because as you begin, as our viewers begin their health journeys, I think they're going to probably run into this. So I think it's important to note.
So it was not pleasant for me or them. And so I quickly learned, and the summit of what I learned was I transitioned to this, one of the happiest, most meaningful moments of my life. Other people were really like, what is going on? And they encouraged me, and everyone at the workplace was on board. I was able to do an hour plus long lunch and learn. And you can find that on YouTube if you look up Austin GEOG. I was Austin GEOG back then, and it's still there. And that felt great. So people started coming to me, and that
instead of you going to them. Because what we both experienced was when we would be evangelical, when people would just even mention a little bit about our weight loss, then we just vomited the information, and we would hold them hostage and go okay, let me just tell you everything. And here's how you do it. And you got to do it now. And I'm so excited. And I'm going to send you this. I'm going to send you this information. And everyone just was, most people were like, holy moly, not going to stop you in the hallway anymore. And so I think the lunch and learn was a great way that you kind of got around that and were able to present the information in a non-confrontational way.
Yeah, I kind of observed and found out that out of those 100 people, about 15% kind of did gluten-free or grain-free and intermittent fasting. And some of those didn't even tell me that they did, but I heard that they told other people
Oh.
that I had kind of inspired. And one of the people at the cafe, he was from Korea, South Korea, and he had a young daughter. And he actually went grain free and felt like $1 trillion. And he was inspired by me. So someone from South Korea with, like you, corn in El Paso, but he decided to try it and see if it was worth it for him. And it was. Ben Azadi said, people want change, but they don't want to be changed. And that's a good summary of this discussion.
I think that's a great summary. And I think that kind of leads us to, so you're continuing to research, you're continuing to learn more, grow in your health. And then you found Mark Sisson, Primal Con. So tell us a little bit about, becoming a certified primal health coach and just kind of what that entails.
I was lucky enough to find Mark Sisson, and it was at the time when I was expanding gluten-free to grain-free and actually finding that the gluten's only in wheat, barley, and rye is, according to Dr. Peter Osborne and the research I've done, is false. They did that intentionally. There's actually gluten proteins in every single grain. It's just that wheat, 70% of wheat proteins are gluten, I think 73, and corn, 59%. So the average person has the most negative impacts with wheat and corn, but white rice is 5% gluten proteins. So that's why if I ever do have a grain now, it's white rice very occasionally. I found Mark Sisson through grain-free, not gluten-free, but grain-free. I loved his blog, Mark's Daily Apple. I loved the discussions and commentary were so nuanced, and two things could be correct at the same time. And it was looking at health through an ancestral lens. This is literally my tribe. And then I found out through Mark's Daily Apple that they were meeting in Oxnard. And I grew up in Southern California, hadn't been there for years and years. And I got to meet Mark and Daryl Edwards and Brad Kearns and some lifelong friends. And it was just an amazing experience. And they're like, we're starting primal coaching. So you gave me the okay. And, I was now spending money to have a good time, but to help people even better. I think I became like the 35th or 36th primal health coach in the world. And, I was working full time. But then after that, what I did was we started our own meetup for a while. And I also went to Natural Grocers. Remember how fun that was?
Which is a market in our area. Some other people might know of it. So it's a market, and they will have small little health talks.
I gave talks on how to heal. Lots of people showed up. So I just wanted to share between the two of us, and certainly our daughter, most chronic conditions that people suffer from, we've lived. That's how many. We had like a dozen each. So for whatever reason, I think the universe needed me to experience a wide range of chronic illness and to see that I could heal myself. It's called the Wounded Healer Journey. And it gave me the humility to know to be a constant student and a constant teacher, and that my role isn't to prescribe anything. It's really to see people as their whole healed version of themselves before they do them becoming their own healer. So I don't actually heal anyone. I help the people I work with, and I helped you. Didn't I help you become your own healer?
Yeah, no, of course. No, yeah. And I was the one doing the work, but you were the one providing the information, which provided a lot of desire in me because I had the information.
And I think I really held this energetic frequency that I saw you as healed. In retrospect, knew that you had accomplished your healing. And because we lived together, you got that energy of me, my belief that I literally saw the quantum possibility. Yes.
And I remember you saying that, it's possible. Your body knows how to heal. Your body is on your side. And so, and then hearing that all the time, those days, because we know that I was more focused on weight loss than you were at the time, right? Later on, I began to feel so good that it wasn't much of an issue. But there were those days I'm like, oh my gosh, the scale has not moved any. What's going on? And you said,
I'm going to Sonic. No, but that can
happen. Yeah. You just, screw it. This isn't working. It's only been 30 days. It's only been 60 days. And we see that a lot in different forums, right? I've been doing this for 2 months. I've been doing it for 3 months. Well, same for us. We had to do it longer because our bodies had more healing to do before the body
chronic.
Right, would kind of release that fat. And I think that as we continue to go on during your blog and our other podcasts and other people we talk to, I think that's going to come up, more often.
It is. And that's why I encouraged all my coaching clients, how is it going? And they're like, I can't believe how not hungry I am. And I have more energy and I'm not depressed. They would volunteer all those NSVs or non-scale victories. And then they go, I'm only down a pound. And I would say, is your quality of life better beyond what you ever could have hoped for in the month? And they'd be like, yeah. And how priceless is not being hungry? When we started, I asked you how often you ate, and you were like 14 times a day. Now you're telling me you're not hungry. You're setting the stage. You were my first client.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our second client, and we're using the word client very, very loosely, and we don't mean it to offend. Of course, she is my partner, my best friend.
Yeah.
And we're talking about very loosely, the second client was our daughter. So why don't you take our audience through how it expanded from me to you to annoyances at work to then healing at work, but also to our daughter.
So I started with me, and I started feeling better and started thinking more clearly. And that led it to me being very evangelical at work. And I think we've already covered that. It was very similar in that I wanted everyone to feel as good as I felt and have the same results. And what I noticed was people were initially interested, but they very much did not want to have it shoved down their throats. Surprising, right? And so I got to the point where I really, and I still do, I wait for people to come to me, or if the topic comes up, I'm able to show and share a little bit about what I looked like before, because a lot of the people who I work with now don't know what I was like then. All right. So now moving to our daughter. So she was 2 when you started, 3 when I started. And we've shared before that she's adopted, and her bio parents were young and they were not very healthy as well. We know a little bit about that they weren't healthy. There was a lot of trauma that she experienced prenatally. And surprisingly enough, even when a child comes into a loving family very young, that prenatal trauma it still affects within that loving family, providing nurture and support and nutrient dense foods. Even now we see, the effects of that. So what we learned pretty quickly with her as a toddler is that she was something called a hyper responder to certain ingredients, gluten being one, high fructose corn syrup, dyes. And the way that we explain being a hyper responder is that, most kids, right? You have a Coke or a soda or a couple pieces of candy. They might get a little agitated. They might get a little energetic and bounce around. For our daughter, it was like she had 10 sodas or a whole package of candy. And it was a whole different kiddo. It was a total personality change. And as we continued to make these changes with her diet, people would comment, oh, you're really restrictive. Don't you think that's going to backfire later on? And we'll talk more about this in later podcasts and blog posts about what that journey looked like and how we changed. But back then we what we knew at the time, what we saw when we gave her these different things, gluten, high fructose corn syrup, dyes, is that we saw a kiddo that was mentally in pain because she just was so dysregulated.
Perfect word.
Yeah. And so when we made the changes at home and, through school, we saw a much happier child mentally, physically. We saw a kiddo who was able to navigate emotional situations in a much more age appropriate way, I guess. And one of the interesting experiments that wasn't a planned experiment was, hey, let's go hang out with Nanny, right? Let's go hang out with my mom. And I remember early on, my mom was of the camp of a little sugar here, a little piece of toast here, and that shouldn't hurt too much.
She thought gluten was not a thing.
Yeah, she saw how it had worked for us, but she wasn't convinced. And we were visiting their home. We were there for several days. She was given a toast, I believe, like cinnamon toast or something. So we had the double hit of gluten, grains, sugar, and my mom and my stepfather got to experience what we saw on a regular basis. And it was a complete and total meltdown. Just her being so unreasonable, even I think she was 3 going on 4 by this time, not an age appropriate reaction. And that finally clicked for my mom. I see what you're saying now. I understand how important this is, and important that as a family member to follow through with that. So again, information, experience for my mom was really helpful in getting her to buy in to what we were doing for our daughter, and how we were choosing to feed her, and what we were choosing not to feed her. And so that same experience, or that same reaction to how dedicated we were to what we were doing for her, went out to other people. Teachers at her school were concerned that we were being too restrictive. Other friends were like, well, don't you think that as she grows up, she'll probably just want to eat whatever she wants to eat? Definitely. Yeah. We understand that. I think that's part of any growing person's psyche. They're going to want to do the opposite of what their parents have trained them to do, right? Or presented to them. I don't know if I'm presenting this well right now, but we knew we needed to set her up as best we could with as much nutrient dense foods, as much consistent nutrition, so that she could build those healthy neurons. She could build those habits, and that even if she strays away from them later, and she does, she's a teenager now and she does stray away from them, then she's able to identify, wow, look what I did. Even though she won't admit it right now, she is able to identify that when she strays, when she strays, she doesn't feel as good. She doesn't sleep as well. Her body reacts, her skin reacts. She's someone who has eczema. And when we noticed just this her last year in middle school, she was choosing to eat school lunches more often.
Even if we packed.
Yeah, even if we packed, because we would always pack her lunch. So, sharing food with friends, getting school lunch, and her eczema just exploded. The red, scaliness, more psoriasis looking, we noticed, and it was constant, and it was uncomfortable. And she didn't always want to make that connection, but we have now been out of school for 3.5 weeks, and the really bad red patchy areas have gone away. And so, we see what works with her. And even though it's hard, the saying, raising a real food kid is hard, but raising a kid on non-real food is even harder. And so we're pretty committed to.
We want to learn from all of you, and want to be clear that we're not perfect, and our daughter hasn't fully bought in yet, but we're going to navigate that, and we are navigating it, and we are always trying to maximize her inclusion and food enjoyment and minimize toxins. And part of healing with the diamonds is we're going to hopefully get her even more involved in cooking, and healthier alternatives, which there can be healthy desserts for kids. We've done it for us, we've done it for her. And we want to explore that even more. Now, you mentioned your mom as these waves of healing continued to ripple out. But before we talk about your mom, I do want to say that this might be quite common for other parents, that when our daughter was in preschool, that it was easier because everyone was bringing their own uh, meal. But also the one rule that we started at 3 around food and has remained constant to 14, I call it the prime rule, is we never once made her something special for dinner. We would make a family dinner, but because I worked as a fasting coach, if she told us she wasn't hungry, we never said, you have to eat. We did say you need to be at the family dinner table that we're on now and spend family time with us.
As we ate.
And then we would put, our microwave doesn't work in the background, but we use it to store things. We would put her meal in the microwave for later.
You don't have to eat. We understand if you don't want it or you're not hungry, but before anything else, so before like any fresh fruit that would be considered dessert, you do have to eat a portion of your protein. And we have sat by that. Like we have stuck. That's one thing we've really consistently stuck by. And it has worked so well for us because in the, like at first she'll be like, nope, I'm not hungry. Don't want to eat. And most times by the end of the meal sitting here and she's watching us enjoy this great food, she'll say, okay, let me go get it. And she'll go grab her food.
And more often than not, she ends up loving the taste.
Exactly.
And she cycles. But on to your mom, because it expanded to your mom. So take our audience through that.
So my mom was, from early on, she didn't have as much of a weight problem as we did. She was never considered obese at all. And she was able to control that through like white knuckling it. And she would even say, and we're going to actually have her on as one of our podcasts. She would say, she had, talking about willpower, she had the willpower. She would like, I'm going to eat salad and that's it. As she got older as she was retired, going to her church groups a lot, there were times when there was sugar available.
That's true.
And my stepfather too. Yeah. My stepfather still hasn't made the change completely. So he still likes to have bread in the house. He still likes to have, pecan pie here and there. And so there were those things. But here's what she'd do. She'd have some, she'd have like half a slice, right? But she was still eating it. And she was doing things like in the morning, not eating a lot, but then starting just with fruit or, more sugary yogurt.
Almost every fat unknown to her was seed oil as well. Right. So you're right. She was a good BMI, but she also wasn't healthy as she was aging.
Right. She had anxiety, depression. She also was suggested by her doctor to be on certain medications that we won't go into. Do you want to speak more to that?
I presented her with some scientific research because, no medical advice here, obviously. But here's some things that you might not have heard of. And they were PubMed articles. And I helped her understand the difference between absolute risk and relative risk. People might guess what type of medication, but also the roles of cholesterol and why it's called the molecule of life. And ironically, she was suffering from muscle pain. She worked very hard on her relationship with sugar, but she did have the fruit and the seed oils, and she was always health conscious, but she was following the conventional advice.
And I think that's important to know that, like, even she was listening to all the advice. She became an adult as they were switching over to don't do lard, do vegetable shortening. And so she was following what she had been told to follow. She was eating small portions. She was eating multiple times a day throughout the day. She just was doing all those things that we now know are not beneficial. And as she got older, she began suffering more, not as happy, really bad arthritis. She would do this. She would massage her hands and say, oh, my arthritis is so much worse today.
And then eventually, I think the seed oils and everything caught up. And she did in her 70s. Gained 20 pounds, and you could see the inflammation in her face. But then what happened at 74?
She really started listening to what we were doing. And she started listening to you and was open to you presenting the science behind it. And I think she just continued to see in us that it was working and we were happier and we were healthier. And so it was go time for her. And so she calls Larry her guru. He said, "No, I'm just your guide." I think it's really sweet. I think she says that because she feels like, you really helped her a lot. You gave her so much information, and she lost those 20 pounds, and she will share with you on the podcast.
And put on muscle at
Yes,
74.
put on muscle.
Yeah.
And she's an active person. She gets out and she works out in her yard.
Absolutely.
She is not sitting around. My stepfather is still working and she's driving to see him at all the different work sites he's at. She's putting luggage in and out of her car. She's helping family members with household tasks. So she's not just doing her household tasks, she's doing household tasks for others. And sometimes there's days where I'm like, whoo, look at that energy she has. Like, I'm amazed at what she's got going on. And she'll be 78 this summer.
20 pounds came off, the muscle came on, and better mood, better energy, just better quality of life. And I had worked for a health coach for 6 years, and all of my successes were equally meaningful. But I had quite a few people in their 70s and 80s get healthier than they ever imagined. And I think that gives a lot of hope to.
Yeah, it does. You can start at any age. There's hope for anyone. And as looking at healing with the diamonds from the family aspect, you can be assured if you have older members of your family, if when they're ready for this information, when they see you start to heal, there's this opportunity there that, they might take it on as well. And they might make that decision that, just being, again, an example, that beacon of light without shoving it down their throats.
Yeah, it doesn't work for mother-in-laws or moms or equally. Larry, go away. You're not a guru, you're a pest. And it's super common why we talked about whys being fuel, that people that did have grandkids, it was almost 100%. They would say playing with the grandkids and being around with the grandkids and dancing, hiking with the grandkids. You want to enjoy your grandkids and vibrant health.
You work so hard for retirement. You want to enjoy the time that you've got. You were practicing on myself and our daughter and my mom. And then you had the opportunity to work with Dr. Jason Fung in the fasting method. So what was that experience like? You learned so much. You gave a lot to the fasting method as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had continued to share also through social media. It was very well received there. And people like Dr. Fung, followed me and came to know of me. I wrote a well-received Diet Doctor article. If you look up Larry Diamond Diet Doctor, you'll find that. If you look up Larry and K Diamond and the word Yahoo, you'll see a Yahoo article. And back when it was published, Yahoo was the biggest website. Yeah. And at one point in time, we were the main scrolly thing.
15 minutes of fame there.
And I really enjoyed Dr. Jeffrey Gerber's low carb Breckenridge at the time. And then I really like a young man named Sam Feltham. Hint, you may be hearing more about Sam on Healing with the Diamonds podcast. But we had always wanted to go to Europe. So there was the Public Health Collaboration UK.
It was their second one, right?
It was their second one. And I'm like, let's go to Europe as a family, go to Ireland, go to England, go to Stonehenge, go to all these amazing places, Dublin, all of Ireland, have an awesome time. And why don't we go to Manchester and go to this conference?
Go to this conference, yeah.
And so I
got to
meet Sam in person. Dr. Fung was there. So people know, rightfully so, of Dr. Fung and Megan and their contribution to global healing and unbelievable human beings. They were starting an online version of the fasting method. Dr. Fung's a kidney doctor in Toronto. You have to be in his service area to see him as an MD. They, Megan and Dr. Fung are so passionate about the healing, they wanted to do an online presence. So we're as a family going to low carb Breckenridge, and Megan was there. I'm not sure Dr. Fung was at that conference, but everyone thought it was an incredible idea for me to be a fasting coach at the fasting method. And it was a spectacular 6 years. And I was also a researcher. I did one-on-one coaching. I did small group coaching, but there was also a community there. So I led a lot of what were called community meetings. There was science hour with Larry, which I loved. There was movement with Larry, which I loved, eating strategies and weight loss. And it was just so much fun to be part of people's journeys. And there was this wonderful cross fertilization. So I brought sweet potatoes are good to make. I brought carb cycling to TFM. I would talk about toxins and personal care products and household products. I'm so passionate for all the women out there, how much they can clobber hormones. We no longer have anything with fragrance. We use dryer balls, we use essential oils. If it has fragrance, we won't use it. And I was researching and doing PDF presentations and getting guests for them. And I was learning from the community and my coaching clients. And I have these 6 years of experience of what I see people struggle with and how there were commonalities among my successes. And I love fasting, and it is so key. But I saw that my long-term successes, first, any deviation from the standard modern diet of high ultra processed food and frequent eating is an improvement. And many people can get a huge benefit from a 10-pound weight loss and still be morbidly obese, but they've maybe avoided something catastrophic. But for people that want to get all the way to
A health
goal to have triglycerides over HDL be less than 1, to have fasting insulin like 6 or less, the only people that I've ever seen do that, including us and including every client, do a combination of the fasting that's therapeutic for them and their whole real food freedom journey, which is a whole food way of eating they love that loves them back. I've never seen anyone personally, and I'm sure they exist, remain on the standard modern diet and be able to out nature it, out fast it, out movement it, out, quantum healing and light is all of those are super important and super healing. And people can look like $1 million, like work out a lot and have the muscles and the 15% body fat, but they're not necessarily healthy at the metabolic level, the cellular health level, the inflammation level. So that's my personal perspective. And I want healing to be all of these things. But yeah, such a great opportunity. I loved it.
And I'm excited because a lot of those things that you and I felt really strongly about with the fasting method community was talking to the community members and was sharing and doing those community meetings and our cookie demo.
Let me ask you about that. So Kaylin, graciously, it was awesome. So I was the coach doing a live cooking demo. It was actually Kaylin primarily. She was the cook during the demo. You want to give a little background info to that and just your experience? Because we definitely want to do that at Healing with Diamonds.
Yes, the cooking demo was definitely, I think, my favorite thing to be a part of as he was doing his health coaching journey with the fasting method. So they had decided that you would do a live cooking demo. And I said, hey, well, that sounds fun. I'll be a part of it. I enjoy cooking. And so we started, and it quickly became like both of us prepping, because I was also working. It was weekly. It was during the work week. And there were many days where I would walk in the door and put my stuff down and walk onto the live Zoom meeting. So Larry would prep, and then we would go and we would prepare a meal, and we would talk to the participants about what we were doing. We would get input. I loved the input from the community members. They would share their successes. They would share what worked for them food wise, and cooking tips and tricks. Larry was there to do the science and talk about what we were cooking and why it worked. And then we both talked about the cooking tips. I shared
And techniques.
and techniques,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I learned so much during that time because my cooking, well, the way I learned to cook was from my mother and my grandmothers. So it was nothing technical. So many times I would say, like, I just learned this from YouTube University. And so I was learning and sharing, and it was such a great experience. And
It was so
it was so
fantastic
fun.
because we learned how to do various sauces, and how to debone a chicken thigh, which is a lot easier. Often choosing recipes, there were a wide range of recipes. We would do very simple ones, but also ones that blew our socks off, like a paleo creamy gravy that is the best gravy on planet Earth. And it's made with onions, mushrooms, and coconut milk. I almost
So
have it memorized. It's super healthy. You could eat it as a soup, even. So, an example like that, like everything in that gravy is healthy. And it's not only grain free, it's even dairy free.
Right.
And we're not dairy free, but that's my favorite gravy in the world. And we would do a Whole30 month, which was awesome. And we're grain free. So there were hundreds of amazing recipes, and they were all grain free.
Yeah.
Because we would sample it, and we were gonna, yeah.
And it just to be totally transparent, these were recipes. So I'm not sitting here making up these recipes in my head. Like some of them, I do have some that came from either my growing up or learning from my grandparents or so forth. But many of these were me and Larry finding recipes and
cookbooks. I have about 50 cookbooks.
Right. And not all recipes are created equal. There were some that were bombs, but the recipes we brought to the cooking demo were things that worked for us. And that's one of my visions for Healing with the Diamonds, is to bring to you these recipes that worked for us and were easy and or at least accessible.
Many of them were easy.
Yeah.
And we did that, and we only had 50 minutes, and prepping and cutting and cooking and oven time, I mean, pretty amazing. Occasionally we would have to have made it the night before because of the cooking time, but the prep times were usually very doable. And I do want to shout out, I think you've met her in person. She doesn't know us though, but a lot of the recipes were from Nom Paleo, NOM Paleo, and Michelle Tam. And just want to give a shout out for her website.
So, so what we've learned, basically, we want to pass it on to other families, and we want to show them that it is possible to heal as a family, to do it in a happy, vibrant, joyful way. And so that is one of our big focuses for Healing with the Diamonds, is that we want to show them that eating nutrient-dense foods can be accessible, healthy, easy, and you can do it as a busy working family.
Absolutely. And, thinking about the primal coaching and everything I got there, everything I got from the 6 years at the fasting method, 12 years plus now of my journey, 11 years plus of yours. So that's a combined 23 years of family experience. And, we're constant learners. I have a background in regenerative ag, essentially, and what's known as indigenous wisdom. And it was so interesting. So that interest in the relationship between humanity and Gaia, or planet Earth. So my degrees are in geography, which is human environment interactions at the university level. Then my brain went, what is the main way that humanity interfaces with Gaia? And it's agriculture, ranching, and farming. So I was actually going into Wendell-Berry, Albert Howard on soil, the Rodell Institute. So this was in the early 90s. I was doing kiss the ground type research. And that is a big part of Healing with the Diamonds to me. I believe that as an individual heals, it's more likely for their family to heal. As the family heals, it's more likely for extended family to heal. These ripples, as we heal in our community, we're going to be giving a lot of our herbs away. We engage in community healing, and then ultimately, and humanity have to heal together. So we're also going to be bringing in regen egg and stuff.
So it's not just food. It's also reducing toxins in your home, personal hygiene stuff, grounding practices, getting out in your community. And all of these are part of this layering of healing, right? You can't just do it in isolation, right? It has to branch out to all areas of your life. And so we'll talk about how we do that.
Yeah, I think we have a plethora of podcasts, episodes and blog posts and newsletter and all that great stuff.
So if you want all of that great stuff, where should they go? What should they do?
Believe it or not, healingwiththediamonds.com and Instagram, Healing with the Diamonds, and consulting. And we're structuring consulting with me only, with Kaylin only, and with both of us. And, reasonable pricing. I think it's going to be a great opportunity, community, but also we're going to be doing a free newsletter and these podcasts and eventually Facebook and YouTube. And we would love your support. So when any human heals, the whole world becomes healthier. So we are all quantumly entangled. So let's heal together.
I like it. All right. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to coming to you with our next podcast and continuing to learn together.
And heal together.
Thank you. Bye. Okay.